Hey there everyone, this is Michael Dougal, your real estate resource, and I'm going to share the differences between living in Calgary and living in Toronto during this video so you can be educated whether you're looking at purchasing a property in one of these cities or you're considering relocating. You're going to be best informed, and at the end of the video, I'm actually going to share my predictions with both cities with respect to the real estate and the economy overall. And we're not just going to talk about real estate prices during this video, we're also going to talk about quality of life, transportation, the likelihood of you actually enjoying making a move out there. So if you do get value from this video, consider subscribing. If you are looking to buy or sell, make sure to call me. And if you're a real estate agent anywhere in Canada looking to improve your business, make sure to reach out to me to learn more about our cloud-based brokerage, eXp Realty. Well, let's first take a look at real estate prices in both cities. Toronto, the average home is selling for $1,108,000, with the average detached property selling for $1,443,000, whereas in Calgary, the average home is selling for $583,000 and the average detached property is selling for $777,000. And based on this chart here, we can see as per the dark blue line as well as the light blue line, just how significant the average price changes across both cities. Condos, it looks like for single family homes, Toronto prices are about twice as much as in Calgary, and condo apartments, you can argue that they're worth even more than that. Although the market is changing. In Toronto within the past year, the average home has not increased in value at all, whereas in Calgary, the average property has increased in value by 10%, and Calgary is certainly or has been more of a seller's market than a buyer's market. In Calgary right now, you can expect to list your home for sale, get it sold pretty quickly with multiple offers, where in Toronto, that hasn't been happening as much as of the past year. And I'm born and raised in Toronto and have explored all across the greater Toronto area, and trust that even if you were to drive 45 minutes over an hour out of Toronto to go to some of the suburbs, the average property really isn't selling for a whole lot less, maybe 20 to 30% less, but it's still going to be more expensive than purchasing in Calgary. And the cost to rent in Toronto is about 30% more than what it is in Calgary, which is going to be important, especially if you're somebody that's looking to buy an investment property. It's nice knowing that your rental income will at least cover the expenses from your monthly mortgage payments, which could be likely to be the case in Calgary, not so much in Toronto. But as per this chart over here, you can see based on the 1 bedrooms and the 3 bedroom and how much the prices are, that in Calgary, you can most likely get a decent home for about $2,000 Canadian per month. Whereas in Toronto, you probably need about $2,500. And especially if you have a family in Toronto, you're going to need $3,000 a month or a $4,000 a month budget for you to be settled. And so in Toronto, buying is more expensive, renting is more expensive, and a whole lot of other things are more expensive as well. If taking a look at this chart here where they've neatly organized a lot of your everyday purchases and determined whether or not it was more expensive in Toronto and Calgary. Even eating a meal at McDonald's was a bit more expensive. Milk was significantly more expensive. Many of your groceries were more expensive, though not all of them. It is worth pointing out eggs, rice, cheese, some other groceries were actually less expensive in Toronto versus Calgary. So surprisingly, when you look at all of your everyday expenses, there wasn't too much of a difference between how much you would be spending in Toronto versus Calgary. But taking into consideration the cost to rent or the cost to purchase, they actually determined you would need around $7,400 in Calgary to maintain the same standard of life that you would have had with $8,300 in Toronto. Although I'm not the biggest fan of this term like standard of living, because we also have to account for, like, sure, in Toronto you may be paying a little bit more, but you're also going to be getting quality entertainment, a lot more quality restaurants. With respect to job opportunities and the economy, it's really going to depend on your field. Something we know about Calgary is that it's mostly driven by energy, it's driven by oil. However, it's really changed over the past few years, and there's jobs in all sorts of industries with a lot of large companies actually employing people from Calgary. At the same time, we have to account for Toronto having very high competition. So where are you more likely to find a job that meets your expectation? It's really going to depend on the industry. But I believe, like Toronto, you may have more opportunities, yet that doesn't necessarily make it better. With respect to transportation and commuting, it's a bit more expensive in Toronto as expected. Your monthly transit pass in Calgary costs $112, whereas in Toronto it's $156. However, Toronto prides itself on its extensive system with subways, buses, streetcars, and a whole lot more. The main issue with Toronto is that there is still major congestion. In Toronto, you've got rush hour in the morning, you've got it also in the late afternoon, but in Calgary, the peak rush hour traffic is between 7:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. Looking at the weather, and this graph kind of says it perfectly. It's like the temperature in Calgary is always going to be a little bit less than in Toronto. So meaning that their winters are a little bit cooler, but meanwhile their summers aren't as warm, because in Toronto it can get really hot. And not only is it hot, but it's hot for an extended period of time. almost to the point that it can get unbearable. And for entertainment, culture, indoor and outdoor activities, both cities have their benefits. In Toronto, we've got great beaches, but of course, you have to drive all the way south in most cases in order for you to get to the beaches. There's a little bit of outdoor activity, but it is limited. However, when it comes to entertainment, nightlife, having a variety, having venues, having things to do which are fun, Toronto really shines. I'm somebody that loves music, and I really appreciate that. A lot of my favorite artists come and they perform at concerts here in Toronto, and I noticed they're not going to Calgary. Although Calgary has some absolutely stunning areas outdoors, from Rocky Mountains to nice rivers, good places to relax. And let's not forget its iconic Calgary Stampede, which all the residents enjoy. And both cities are quite similar when it comes to having fantastic education as well as healthcare. We know that Toronto has some of the best schools: University of Toronto, York University, Waterloo, just a couple of hours out. And that's one of the drivers behind Toronto's strong economy. It's the fact that the education system is so strong, and a lot of people actually move to Toronto to study, or perhaps Toronto is the only place where they're able to study in their field of designation. Calgary has some great schools as well. You have Alberta University of the Arts, that's also a top-rated school. So both cities have great education and great options, and they're far better than the majority of cities across Canada. And my predictions moving forward for the next 5 years are that Toronto home prices appreciate at a much faster rate than in Calgary. Calgary's also had some luck by their side. Oil prices are higher, and that's a significant driver for their economy. We've seen what happened in the past when oil prices had decreased and how much it affected their real estate and their overall economy. So Toronto I see as a bit more of a secure investment, although of course the barrier to entry with some of these prices is so much more higher. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Would you personally buy a property in Toronto or Calgary, and why would you? Be sure to share it in the comment section below. If you are considering buying or selling, make sure to call me. And if you're a real estate agent that's looking to improve their business, learn best practices to generate leads and close sales like I've done, and so many hundreds of others that have benefited from our training, make sure to reach out to me to learn more about eXp Realty. I thank you all so much for your support. Do subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you next time.